All right, so getting into it, Jira. So this is the link to the Jira. I'm going to give a minute or so for everyone to pull that up, kind of navigate around. But once you have that pulled up, then we're going to move on. All right, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to pull up the page because we're going to get into it now. So if you didn't get a chance to pull this up already, the link is posted in the Discord, so just go ahead and click on that. All right, so getting started. What is Jira? We covered this a little bit before, but we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how to use the different features in Jira. So as a reminder, Jira is a task management software. So how does that really work? Well, we come up with a list of issues that need to be done for the game, maybe creating concept art or animating the player or programming some mechanic, basically just coming up with a list of everything that needs to be done. And then those issues are assigned to team members. And as you make progress on your issue, you kind of move it along. We'll see in a bit, there's these different columns where we have like, oh, this has been assigned to me, I have started this, it's in progress, I think I've completed it, so I moved it to review, and then after you get approval for review, then it's moved into the done column and the task has been completed. And what we do is we make a list of every single issue that we think could be completed for this game and we are intending to complete. And then as development goes, we break those different issues into so-called sprints. So every 2 weeks, it's like this is the list of issues that we deemed need to get done in this time, and you just go through that. But then the backlog also exists if you want to look at everything that we're planning on doing. Yeah, so moving on. Here is an example of looking at a board, right? So we have our assigned to do, our in progress, to review, and done. All of the different columns line up, and like I said, you update these as you go. So okay, so moving on to the backlog. This just is what this looks like, as the list of our different issues, which are broken up into sprints. So as you can see here, there's the pre-production final here. This was one of the sprints that we had for the past week that the leads were working on, just in some of our different tasks for that. All right, moving on, quick filters are kind of an easy way to sort through different issues, because if you just look at the board without using a quick filter, then you'll see all of the tasks that everyone is working on for that specific sprint, and that might not be useful information for you. You might not really care what this programming person is doing if you're on the design team, right? So use quick filters. The main one that we have at the moment is the My Issues filter, which, as you can see here, so this is like without using my issues only, that's what my board looked like, and then switching over, you only see the issues that are directly assigned to me. And then later tonight, Nico should have the pod filters set up. So if you click on like your specific pod, it'll show tasks related to just your pod. All right, so moving on a little bit about the to review column. So issues have a reporter or reviewer field. And basically what that means is when you get to the to review section, that person has to approve your changes or approve your task and say that it is complete before it can actually be moved into done. And this is just to verify that a task has been completed correctly and it's up to the quality that we expect for this project. All right, so a little bit about comments. So this is an example comment here that Nico had about something, about planning the lead meeting and this meeting. And then, so comments really are used so you can clarify and communicate about your issue. So if you have any questions about like, hey, how should I actually go about implementing this feature? Hey, what should this character actually look like? If something wasn't well defined, just make a comment about it in the Jira task rather than flooding the Discord with questions. Also, if you want to update a task, like if you've moved it from in progress to review, you could upload a screenshot of what the final version looks like, just so that your reviewer doesn't have to go and actually pull from the project in order to see your work or ask you to email it to them or something like that. All right, Jira also has mentions. So when you're creating, if you are ever in the situation where you're creating a task, or if you're commenting on something and you want to mention, say if you want to mention your pod lead or director or the reviewer for your task, hey, you know, I've gotten this done, please look at it. Similar to a Discord mention, it'll give that person a notification to go and look at your Jira task. All right, so next up are components, and these are kind of similar to quick filters. It's basically like the back end of what like a quick filter will kind of look like, is you can like assign tasks to a component or put them in there as far as I understand. Yeah, it's categorization of the different issues. All right, next up, a burn down chart. So what this does is it keeps track of how many issues do you have left to do, and then how long do you have left to do them, right? So this is an example of a bad burn down chart where we had too many tasks and didn't get them done on time for the end of our sprint, right? But it kind of gets you an idea of if you're on track or not to complete the tasks that are assigned to you. And if you're not, you might reach out to your lead and be like, hey, I can't do as much as I thought I'd be able to, or hey, I need help getting this done, stuff like that. Oh, well, that's kind of inconvenient. For bug reporting, if you're playtesting the game ever and you encounter a bug and you're like, oh my god, this is terrible, this is game breaking, or even if it's just like, hey, this text shouldn't be in this location, something like that, we are asking that people use either ShareX or OBS, which are different video recording software, to just capture your screen, showcase the bug, and then also write up how to reproduce the bug, so how you encountered it. Maybe you're like, oh, I talked to an NPC 3 times in a row and then he tried to kill me, or something, you know, and then mention what the expected behavior was and then what actually happened. And, yeah. All right, so this is your Jira dashboard. So if any of you have Jira open at the moment and you're looking at it, this is probably what you're looking at. We have a couple different widgets here. So we have a days remaining widget, pretty self-explanatory, and that's just the days remaining left in the sprint. Then we have the burn down chart that I mentioned before, and some quick links in the top corner. Look at your different unresolved issues, look at people who are watching your issues, browse different issues, stuff like that. Yeah?
How do we get to the Jira dashboard?
To the Jira dashboard?
So one, navigating just to that general URL will take you to the Jira dashboard. And two, if you click like the Jira software logo at the top left, then that will also take you, I believe that will also take you to the dashboard. Something else I actually want to mention that I forgot to is, if you want to actually get to like the sprint board, like the active sprint board, so you can see all of the issues or your issues, etc. This might have been this, so sorry for this. But select boards at the top, and then I think currently there's only one. It's like blue board or something like that. So that's how you would see your issues in the rest of the sprint.
All right. So should we take a minute, let people play around in Jira, or I think move on?
How many people are interested in it?
Sure. Let's take a show of hands. If people are interested in sitting and playing around for Jira, raise your hand.
I mean, it's super fun.
Oh boy. Okay, 3, 4. Yeah, no. Okay, we'll move on. All right, so yeah, do that in your free time, or if you don't want to pay attention, please pay attention while I talk, but if you don't, go ahead and do that. So moving on to Confluence. So this is the link to Confluence that is also posted in the Discord. If you just want to do that, I think we'll probably just move on and assume that people will click that link. So what is Confluence? So Confluence is documentation software. So this is where we're going to be like, we might have write-ups on how to create like a certain art asset, like documenting like the workflow for creating a storyboard for the animatics pod or something like that, or how to use a certain asset package when you're programming something like that. Basically, Confluence is broken down into spaces and then pages. Spaces are kind of like folders for pages, right? Think of it like a Google Drive, right? Like you have several different like shared drives that you can have access to. That's sort of similar to what a space functions as. So we have, well, I'll get to that later, but yeah. And then there are pages which are underneath specific spaces. So those can have subpages beneath them, so it's kind of like a tree hierarchy of several pages going down. And pages have what are called macros, which are kind of like shortcuts when you're creating a page. Like if you want to display all of the children of a page, it's like a quick, just pre-made command that you can fill out. And then pages also have different sections to kind of structure them. Also, there are questions for Confluence, which is kind of like a, it's very similar to Piazza, if anyone's familiar with that. All right, moving on. So, spaces. So we have two spaces in our Confluence. We have the WolverineSoft Studio space and then the Project Blue space. The WolverineSoft Studio space is kind of higher level things about the studio, maybe write up on like animation in general rather than like how to use the 2D animation package that we'll be using for Project Blue, right? Or really it's just a database of knowledge that's intended to move forward and be kept throughout the duration of the studio's existence. And then Project Blue is the main space that we'll be working in this semester and where the majority of our documentation will be taking place. It also contains documentation for specific pods. Yeah. All right, moving on, pages. So here's an example of the tree browser that I mentioned before. This is just showing underneath the meeting recordings, we have different pages for each different meeting, and then we have a YouTube video embedded in that page. So pages are used for actually storing your content, tree hierarchy, and different pages can have different permissions. So say if you are working on a draft of a page and you don't want to show people yet, we'll get to this later, but there are personal spaces where you can kind of keep your own work and not allow other people to see it if you would so wish. Yeah, just for editing purposes, I suppose. All right, so editing and publishing pages. So pages come with a lot of different formatting options. You can do basically anything you could do in Google Docs or Word. You can also, this is where you will use macros and different widgets. For an example here, I just pasted a URL to YouTube, and then Confluence automatically made a widget for me that would just embed that video into the page. And it has this for other links, I think. I'm not sure which all types of links are supported. I think like Vimeo as well and things like that. We'll also be having some like how to use documentation coming out soon about just how to actually make a Confluence page, and that'll go along with, we'll talk later about making your own personal space. All right, so talking a bit more about macros, to the left here we have the macro shortcut, which is just an open curly brace, and then from there you'll get a drop-down menu of different suggested macros that you might want to use, and you can just type in the name of whatever macro, or you can scroll down, or click on the bottom option here to just open the macro browser and look at all available macros. So macros let you make really complicated page elements very easily. So like, for instance, one that I use a lot when making pages is the children display macro, which just shows all of the pages that are sub-pages of a specific page. So just on the pods page, adding a children display adds all of those different pod pages as links. Also, so that's one useful one, and then also the table of contents will just make a quick table of contents for you based on the different sections of your page and the different headings and such. As well, you can also create your own macros if you so wish, I believe. So I think Nico set one up for like pod placements or something, and it was just like a table and had like artists, programmers, designers, yada yada, and it just quickly allows you to recreate the same content over and over again on multiple pages. All right, Confluence also has different page templates. So these are great if you want to make a specific thing that's probably been made before. Like if you, some common ones that we use are file lists and meeting notes. So meeting notes just has like an agenda, some goals, and a section at the bottom for like assigning tasks. So that's a nice kind of template to use, and there's several different options if you want to browse through them. All right, so next up is blogs. So we'll be using blogs for write-ups about different decisions. I believe Nico will be making one in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. and also for documenting specific things that might not relate to as many members. If you just want to write something up for other people in your pod to look at that's not super specific or shouldn't be shown to others. Sorry, is super specific. Also, if you want to detail progress on like your task, if you're like, hey, these are issues or things, or this is what I'm working on, stuff like that. And just if you want to do a blog for fun. So here's an example post that Faulkner did a few days ago. Is this Piazza? And no, it's not. Questions are like Piazza. So really, they work in the same way where you just kind of post a question and then there will be different responses in there. And you know, we might kind of look over that occasionally and try and answer people's questions as they come in. So if you have any questions about the narrative, you're like, hey, why did we make this narrative decision? Or who do I talk to about such and such a thing logistically? Or hey, how does this workflow thing work? Feel free to post them in questions and we'll go through and answer them. Next up is comments. So here's some examples of comments on that previously mentioned blog post, just showing it's like any other comment system. You can reply to specific comments and have comment chains, stuff like that. They allow for feedback and communication about a specific blog or post or page. You can also mention people like you can in Jira. So if you want to mention your pod lead or someone to review your work on something, or if you want them to review someone else's work or something like that. Moving on, personal spaces. So here's an example. This is my personal space. We're probably going to have everyone create a personal space just to have everyone get familiar with Confluence and how to use it. So what I've written in my personal space and what I would recommend others write is just a brief introduction, just about who you are, you know, just very simple to get to use the page editor and figure out how that works. And then also what personal spaces are good for is any work in progress pages that you're working on. If you don't want to share it with other people, just writing your drafts in there under your pages, and then they can be transferred to other spaces and other pages and underneath other pages later. You can also use them for personal blog posts if you don't want to post a blog post in a specific space. Or in the studio space, if you want a blog post on your own personal space, you can. All right, so next we're going to have Matt come up and give the MVP demo. But first, actually, I'll probably take any questions about Confluence or Jira. If anyone has any. 5 seconds, going once. Going twice, no questions. Okay, if no one has any questions, I know this was kind of boring, but feel free to message me in Discord and we can talk, or message Nico, or any of your leads should be familiar with using Confluence. All right, so on to the MVP demo.
Basically, I'm going to be talking because if you've ever tried to explain something to somebody while you're playing a game, it's very difficult and you end up just running off a cliff 15 times. So we're going to be showing off the MVP, and so basically we wanted to just get in the core systems for the game to get a feel for what we want to try and achieve with the game that we're going to be producing over the next several months. So as you can see here, we've made a 2D platformer where you can run left and right and jump up and down. Yes, we've done it. So through this first section, Matt's going to be just jumping over some simple platforms, avoiding some hazards. And you're going to notice that he's fallen into this pit. And right now, it looks like he can't get out. But with a little of experimentation, the player will quickly realize that they can also wall jump. And so they can use that to ascend vertically very quickly, but they can also jump back and forth between walls to move quickly. And so as you can see, we don't have the hazards in just yet. That's a programming task that'll be implemented shortly. But right in this section, this is the teleport. So he can throw out, that little white block is the weapon that the main player is going to throw out. And it'll go out a certain distance and then stop moving, and he'll be able to teleport to that. Or if he wants to teleport a shorter distance, then he can just immediately hit the right trigger and he'll make a short teleport. And in this section, you're going to notice that he would have just fallen right onto those hazards. That is an experimentation with the slow-mo mechanic. You might have noticed whenever he holds down the left trigger to aim where he's going to teleport, time slows and the little bar appears above his head that's going to slowly reduce over time. And that's the amount of slow-mo that he can use. And so we're considering looking into other ways that we can use that, specifically with like platforming or potentially even combat. Spoiler warning, there's combat in this game too. So as he's hopping up this wall, you'll notice on the right side that there's a few placeholder enemies with some really fancy art that we spent lots of hours designing. And but they just have simple patterns, and over here you'll be able to see that when he presses X, he'll be able to attack, and he'll be able to attack in all 4 directions. So when he jumps, he can attack below him, and if he holds the stick up when he presses the attack button, he'll also be able to attack above him. So right now we just have like that gray box that's representative of the hitbox. That's obviously going to be replaced with like a sword swing and an actual all the VFX and the fancy, all the fanciness that accompanies that. And right here, he's finally reached the final room of our MVP. But yeah, so this is what we have as a starting point. It is actually up on Confluence right now. So if you download that build, there's actually one bug that I need to change. So if you're on Windows, don't do that just yet. But it's publicly available for all you guys if you want to download it and play it. It's currently set up to only handle like a controller. So if you have a mouse and keyboard, you're going to need a controller plugged in to play with that. But we have this so that our designers for all the different pods, if you're going to be building a level or if you're designing enemies, you're going to be able to use this as a prototype to start and feel like what it's actually going to be like when you're trying to face off against these enemies with the player.
So the first thing I want to say is I lied. Last time I mentioned that we're probably going to be doing a vertical slice, and then I took the time to tell you what a vertical slice was and went really in depth. But I was wrong. We're not going to do that. The main reason I'm actually going to make a distinct blog post about why we chose not to, like what the problems were, why we decided not to, why we think we're still going to be able to, do the whole game, et cetera. But the short of it is essentially just like the amount of time we had. It didn't really make sense to do a vertical slice and an alpha and a beta because like everything would have only had like 3 weeks in between each one. And so that's not really enough time to make any kind of big progress. So in regards to the actual first sprint, the main point of this sprint is going to be 2 weeks long. If you go to the Jira, someone tell me if I'm wrong, but I should have started the actual sprints. So whenever you go to active sprints, it should have like a few issues. Like most of the issues are going to be populated by tonight / tomorrow, and so that's when people are going to get more of assignments. And we're going to break into pod meetings after this, so you might have a little bit more conversations about that. But the main point of the first sprint is kind of like implementing the like foundational assets or tasks, items, et cetera, excuse me, for each pod. Examples are, for a lot of like the enemies and bosses and player, they're going to have to create like concept art and, design proposals for how like behaviors they think that the enemies could be doing, or like what the boss like fight would look like, where it would be happening. Like level design might start to do some really rough tile palettes, right? It's just like the kind of basic but introductory tasks that every pod will require. Your pod lead will go a little bit more into specifics about what that like actually means for your pod. But I just kind of wanted to let everyone know that. The other thing that's important to note is I am going to, tonight, on the Confluence homepage, or on the production homepage, one of the two, I'll let you know when I put it up, going to have a full like project timeline uploaded, because I mentioned that we're still working on that, and I gave you kind of an expectation of what it'll look like, but this one will be like, concrete, and like these are our plans, these are certain deadlines we have. At this point, this pod should be doing this, et cetera. And so ideally, it can be like a larger project timeline, so you can just see like the alpha, the beta, et cetera. And then you can like maybe click one, and then you can see each pod's individual roadmap. That's like the ideal one, but we'll see how much time I have. But that should be uploaded tonight. But yeah, I just wanted to really quick let everyone know like what the expectations for the sprint was, and let you know that the blog post or some kind of updates are going to be coming out regarding the choice to not do a vertical slice and the full project timeline. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions about that? Cool. Then George, let's talk about this. Yeah, let's go on.
All right, so I'm just gonna finish up here with some quick final thoughts and reminders, same as every week, before we break off into pod meetings. So remember, again, checking the Discord frequently, please react to messages, yada yada, you know the spiel here. Also, check out, Max told me to mention this, check out the project asset organization doc in the Google Drive. So this is just the hierarchy of how we'll be storing files inside of the actual Unity. Oh, the Confluence, all right. Sorry,
yeah,
my
just
bad.
the top level in the WolverineSoft Studio Drive.
Okay.
It just says how the assets should be laid out in the project folder.
Okay, my mistake, false information. But anyways, yeah. Also reminder again, please join the Atlassian project or products if you haven't already. So just the Bitbucket, Jira, Confluence, the link to the invitation link to all of that will be in your email if you haven't already seen it. And if you haven't gotten an invitation, please message either me or Nico, and we'll get that taken care of. And then just the normal, we're having these meetings normally Sunday at 2 p.m. Today was a special case because of the game jam this weekend, but normally we will be meeting Sundays at 2 p.m. in this room. Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to message or email me. Now then, we are going to be moving on to pod meetings. So in order to go to your pod meetings, you have to know what pod you're in. So I hope that everyone has had a chance to look at the pod placement doc that Nico placed in the Google Drive. If anyone doesn't know what pod they're in, come up to me. We'll talk, figure it out, and get you to your meeting.